Welcome to SpeakUp Talks. My name's Travis, and today I'm joined by Ariza Bidolina. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here, Travis.
Ariza currently leads the third-party cyber risk management program at InterIKEA Group.
Yeah.
And in a previous role, you basically designed and led the rollout of a third-party risk management program across 7 operating entities. So today I just want to take the time to kind of relive that experience, but also really examine the lessons learned during that program rollout.
Absolutely. So my previous employer, the company that I worked for, was a large telecommunication company, group of companies that was operating in developing countries in, I would say, high risk, probably markets such as Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Ukraine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and since telecommunication is very critical infrastructure, there was a need for more digitalization, there was a need to go more leaner, and there was a need to improve and upscale the compliance program there.
Obviously, a large organization probably had a lot already in place. So what was the reason why it was necessary to overhaul the existing program? And basically, what led to this decision?
One thing that is very important to understand, the markets that we were operating in, these are considered to be high-risk countries. And initially, compliance program, especially third-party risk management there, required very meticulous supervision, hand-holding, and the controls need to be implemented everywhere. At that time, the third-party risk management program that we had was based on the relationship-based due diligence. So every contract that we had with every vendor had to be screened, assessed for the risks associated, given the corruption risks that are high there, then conflict of interest that are very high there. So it was a need over there to have relationship-based screening. But over time, since the program grew, the maturity level of the program grew, and the maturity level of the organizations grew, and the culture changed in those organizations that we were leading there, we saw the need to move from relationship-based screening to partner-based screening, to supplier-based screening, or what they call vendor-based screening. That was one of the main reasons. The other reason that we had is there was a need to move towards digital. That was a, let's say, company-wide, group-wide goal that we had. And we had these several platforms that were operating by procurement teams, several platforms that were operated by compliance teams, then the other platforms that were operated by risks, and then the other platform for the vendor. So there was a lot of compartmentalization and segregation, and we thought that there was a need to create a pipeline actually that would allow us to smoothly move information from one system to another system. And the consequent, one of the additional reasons that we also had is that we listened to the pain points of our clients, internal clients. These are business owners, the initiators, the contract managers, is that they had to always input the information twice, once into the procurement platform and then the other to the due diligence platform. And sometimes they would upload something there, but not there, or vice versa. And then it would create a double work. And we wanted to make sure that we would be able to save those resources. And then we would have all this pipeline that would allow us actually see at what stage of the sourcing each vendor or supplier was, that would provide us more transparency, overview over the process. And then that would allow us also to see how much of a time we are actually spending on each stage of the sourcing process, and then how much of a time we're actually spending on the due diligence or providing the recommendations or doing the risk assessment for the vendors, or the ongoing reassessments and continuous monitoring as well.
Okay, well, I mean, it sounds like you saw a golden opportunity now to kind of really make the program, the process more efficient, and made the decision that change was needed.
Yes, we saw that opportunity I think a year before we actually started doing that, because we spent a lot of time taking to our internal stakeholders. And we felt the need as a compliance officers at the time, we also spending a lot of time doing the same work.
Yeah.
Like repetitively, the same vendor, but for the different contracts, we would do the screening, we would do the assessment, we would do the due diligence. And we were like, okay, why we are spending so much time on one vendor, checking every contract, when we could actually do the assessment on the partner and spend more time on the analysis, on the assessment, and actually identify the risks associated with the vendor for the whole organization rather than on one particular contract.
Okay, well, let's go a bit further into kind of the timeline of events of how you not only designed the program, but also then launched it and managed that rollout.
Yes, as I mentioned, I think we started thinking about moving to new platform, to new approach roughly a year before. We gathered up a working group of compliance professionals from those 7 operating companies that we had. And these were the actual compliance experts who would be hands-on doing the due diligence every day as a part of the day-to-day operations. Along with that, we've gathered input and combined work with procurement department because they were also one of our key stakeholders at the time. Also, I think it's very important that we've incorporated insights, recommendations, and actually had members within our working group, guys from IT, cybersecurity, information security, because we knew that we wanted to do the integration with our existing ERP platform. So there would be one pipeline of information. And we had to have those guys who have the technical knowledge.
Indeed.
Yes, as far as compliance professionals, they are multitasking, multifaceted people. We still needed to have those people who have this technical knowledge. And of course, we had the people who would be doing the actual integration with our ERP system. These are the different set of people.
Oh, yeah.
And then given that this was 7 operating companies, there was 7 groups of people that we had to organize. Yes. But being able to combine all of these great minds together into one working group allowed us to have this meticulously written technical requirements for the new solution that we wanted to have. And we started looking into the market, what are the platforms that are available there. And we had, I think, sourcing for 6 months. We started with 9 vendors.
Okay.
We had 9 demos. Then we, I think, narrowed down to 4 that were actually meeting the requirements. Then we had narrowed down to 2, the final ones. And when we decided to, okay, now it's a make a decision time, we've gathered again all of those stakeholders, especially the compliance community who would be actually doing the due diligence from all of those 7 operating companies. And we had extensive sets of demos once again, because it was really important for us to understand what we're actually getting. And it was really important for us to make sure that the people who would be actually using the platform, they're happy with the choice that you're going to make. User interface friendliness, yes, it was one of the crucial moments for us, because we used to have, in my previous experience, a platform that was just cascaded down from, let's say, headquarters. And people who would be actually working with those screenings and assessments, they were not part of decision making. And once they start using the platform, they realized that it's actually not user friendly, because you had to navigate so many tabs in order to be able to find one button that you wanted to have. One action. And we made a decision based on the majority vote, so that people would actually feel that this is the decision that they've made.
That's good.
And they would not be like blaming afterwards, saying like, oh, this is a headquarters that made the choice and not us who are actually working with the platforms. But that was very important for us to make sure that the people, the employees, the compliance officers, they would be part of decision making, because that would allow us to later on involve them more during the implementation phase, during the testing phase, and during the integration phase.
So I think obviously that's quite a large undertaking, rolling out such a complicated program touching many very highly regulated in a lot of ways, touch points within the company.
Absolutely, yeah.
And let alone across different countries and operating entities with also their own regulations.
Yes,
So
yes.
huge project, but I think there's definitely something within kind of the story that I think a lot of our listeners would resonate with, whether they are currently managing various compliance programs or also launching their own. So I wanted to maybe take some time to kind of, if you could think back through your experience and maybe pull out what would be the most important lessons learned from you.
I would probably name 3, 4 that I still can remember. One thing that I would definitely say is that project management is really important. Luckily, we had an absolutely amazing project manager with us. She was incredibly meticulous at everything. That allowed us to stay on top of everything, every issue, status reports, challenges, bottlenecks that we were facing, the meetings that we had, the conversations, the reports that we need to make to the key stakeholders vertically, other stakeholders horizontally. That was very important. Also, another part that is very important to understand is that whenever you undertake any kind of project, you would have an idea in your mind that would go this way. You would have some timelines and would say like, oh, I'm going to finish it within 6 months or 1 year. I only need 3 people in my team. That's never going to happen. Yes, never.
Unfortunately.
Timelines would shift, definitely.
Yeah.
Something would come up, something you would forget, something you would remember right at the end before going live. That's also I had in my experience. Yeah, absolutely. But it is important to have this constant communication.
Yeah.
And moving to communication, I think it's a really another lesson learned that I would highlight is that learn to speak the same language.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about only the same language that you have with the teams across the globe. That would be also very great plus. But also speak the same language with the solution provider that you're gonna select and have at the moment. Because what I assumed is that, we are working in the same industry.
Yeah.
When I say, for example, workflow, they would understand the same word workflow, yes? Or when I say controls, they would understand the controls because we are all in the GRC industry and compliance industry, IML, sanctions, more or less the same concepts. But in reality, it turned out to be that it is very important to learn to speak the same terminology with the vendor. That would allow to speed up the process extremely. And then at any time, once you start the implementation phase, I think it's very important to spend a little bit more time to aligning on this terminology, because when I say third party, for example, you would understand as a vendor, or the other company would say supplier, or the other party say business partner. Yeah, so it's very different.
Yeah.
And when I say assessment, they would assume it's kind of, some Excel work, but the others would assume it's a very deep dive verification. So, or like a audit type of thing. So it is very important to spend some time learning the language.
Yeah.
That's one part. And then the other part is learn to speak the technical language. Yeah, that's a very important thing, because I was always on a very polite communication with guys from cybersecurity, IT, and other tech environment. But when it came to the implementation phase, I was forced to learn the language of those people who are actually architecture integrators, integration architects. And the first thing that I was forced to learn is to speak their language again, because they are highly technical people, and it is in your benefit to be able to deliver those requirements and speak their language once they understand the requirements, they would do everything very quickly, and the implementation would go faster, and the controls or the steps, the mapping would be really fast. But this is very important to do, the communication, learn to speak the language, whether within the vendor and the company or within the technical teams and the compliance team.
I mean, I think it's funny how often in just life and professional life, people not being on the same page in terms of terminology and just what you're talking about. So I think very much a lesson learned, not just for compliance people listening, but everyone really, before you have a really in-depth conversation talking about needs and providing solutions to those needs, it's really important to just understand, are we on the same page? Are we talking about the same thing? So definitely. Any other insights you can provide?
The other thing is that everybody says stakeholder management is really important. Of course, yes. And I want to say that not only vertical stakeholder management is important, because whenever we say stakeholder management, they would say like, oh, it's upwards only about like CEOs, CTOs, or like CFOs, or like chief compliance officers. The people who make the decision have the authority. But in reality, it's also very important to have a really good relationship and use the storytelling and explain why it is important and what kind of values the project that you're running or the platform that you're implementing would bring to the company, to those stakeholders that are on the same level as you. That because these are the people who are actually doing the job. These are the people who would be using that platform, solution, process. And it is very important to get their buy-in.
Definitely.
Yeah, because otherwise you would face a situation when there would be a lot of skepticism and they would not prioritize your request, and then actions get delayed. There would be like a little bit of conflicts, and you would spend a lot of time on that. So it is actually much more important to, once you have the higher ups buy-in, once the budget has been approved, to put more efforts and focus on building those horizontal relationships, because these are the people who are actually doing the job.
I think a lot of people also forget that getting that buy-in from your horizontal stakeholders is also important for after the implementation, because if you roll out, you spend all the time and money rolling out a program only for adoption to become low, and nobody actually using it, that's so much wasted effort and resources.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And it is very important because these are the people who would have more insight during the implementation. They know the process inside and out, and they know what are the pain points that the company or the employees with the company are experiencing. And they might be also a source of inspiration or ideas, how to improve the process, or how to make the integration more seamless, or how to make the implementation of the new tool or solution more approachable. And that would also give you a lot of insights for the training and awareness campaigns that you would be definitely running along with those new platform adoption in the company. Yeah,
definitely. And I think, part of that is also, trusting these individual teams, right?
Yeah.
So I think, when we originally earlier discussed this topic and in preparation for the podcast, you also mentioned how important it is to really just empower those local teams. Can you tell me a bit more there?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that I'm really proud about this project is not only that the money that we saved, for the company, or that we upscaled our due diligence platform or changed the way that we work, but also I've seen how much the team that I was working with, my working group, the compliance experts, specialists, grew over time, and how much they transformed into the leaders themselves. And I think it's very important, especially in such complex projects like this one, because initially I thought I would be running only one project with 7 components, but in reality it turned out to be 7 simultaneous projects that I had to run with 7 different teams, 7 regulations, 7 entities, 7 countries, 7 cybersecurity, data privacy, compliance, workflow requirements, integration requirements. And none of this would be possible if you do not have strong team in place, local one. Yes, and it is very important to empower those people as well. Because one thing I think it's very important to understand, these are the actual people who are doing the operations They are hands-on into the process. And the people at headquarters, they might have been in the operations previously, but they've stepped out. They're looking from above. They're seeing the helicopter view. They see like overarching processes and everything. That's good. But sometimes they forget what are the actual obstacles that they face. People doing the actual due diligence and conducting the business partners, the suppliers, having those back and forth conversations, and then empowering those people to be the spokesperson, spokespeople. Being the leaders is also very important, because these are the actual people who would continue using the platform, who would be the flagmans, who would do the training, who would provide the explanation, who would do further stakeholder management. And it is very important to do some hand-holding at the beginning, but also letting them go and become leaders further. That's one thing. And then also, the other thing is having this back and forth conversation. It's also important to listen to them at the personal level, not only as a headquarters and an operating company, but also as a person, as Ariza, and then the person who is sitting like 3,000 kilometers away from you, and then if they need some kind of hand holding, this is something that you definitely need to provide in order for them to flourish further.
I do see a lot of parallels here between things. So obviously, we're talking about regulations, which is always a umbrella over everything and just guides the decisions that need to be made, and those obviously change per region, right? But I think the cultural element in that as well, which you briefly mentioned, the fact that you're working with people from potentially 3,000 kilometers away. So not only from a professional perspective, but also the personal perspective, you need to be flexible and also spend the time to, for lack of a better term, give them what they need to get the job done, whether it is professional or personal. How do you see that maybe from more the ethics side of ethics compliance then?
For example, the training and awareness program. And what we found to be very effective is not to push down the trainings that are, well, I don't want to say like Western culture based, but more localized. So it is very important to add a little bit of a local context to the training programs, and to make sure that the characters within the training, like whatever system that they're using, they're more similar to the characters that are actually living in this country. Or get the examples of, I don't know, conflict of interest from that specific company or from that specific region that would be relatable to them. That would be also, that was also a great part within our training and awareness program that we did on third-party risk management, because we had to adapt whatever we were saying on compliance, on selecting the vendor, on being transparent, on bribery and corruption controls, on anti-money laundering controls, or when we had to explain the sanctions, for example, to those countries who are have not ever encountered that before. That was one of the main aspects, that we had to draw the parallel to the language, to the instances they are familiar with, so that they would be able to understand why it is important, why we are talking about it in general, because these are the sanctions that are not applicable to their country, not applicable to their operations, for example. And we had to draw those parallels, and it is very important to take into account the culture. Because when you say the word compliance in Western communities, everybody would understand it right away. But for example, in those countries that I was working for, there is not a literal translation of the word compliance.
Okay, interesting.
So that is also one of the factor that you had to adjust. So the same goes, for example, there is a translation for word responsibility, but there is no translation for the word accountability.
Okay.
And then you also have to explain that, in those countries, and there are several languages that don't have the translation for the word accountability. It's the same as the responsibility, but you have to explain what is the difference there. And that takes a lot too.
Going back to what you mentioned, obviously, it's about being flexible. Not only are you working in a professional manner, but you also have to take into consideration the personal aspects of of what you're doing and who you're working with. But obviously, I can imagine such a large program, so many timelines, so many moving pieces.
Absolutely. Oh my God.
Being
yeah,
flexible is quite important. So what are the lessons that you've kind of learned in this experience about flexibility?
I think I mentioned it a little bit earlier. I touched upon that. Is that whatever you had in mind at the beginning is never going to be something that you get at the end. And I think it's something that you need to sit with, especially if you're like result-driven, result-oriented, a person who sees the goal, it doesn't see the obstacles. Yes. It is very important to sit for a moment with the idea that, okay, you had this beautiful picture in your mind. You had to have this unicorn that you're going to be perfect in all the ways. You just need to accept it's not going to be that. Yes. In
Good
some
advice.
yeah, absolutely. Given that the scope of the project, in some cases, in one of the companies, we had this 90% implementation, almost perfect. That was absolutely incredible. In the other companies, we had 80% perfect, more or less. And then the other company only had 60%, almost perfect. Yes. So this is something that you also need to learn to sit with and be grateful for that, because it is never going to be the same as it used to be. It's never going to be almost perfect as you want it to be.
Yeah.
But whatever result that you have achieved is also a result to be proud of.
Sure.
And that's, I think, very important, especially in the current world when you want to show off only a great result and you're like, all your bonuses are on this performance based. It is very important to sit with it, understand it, and be grateful for that. Because, yeah, that's a project. So many moving pieces, so many different aspects. And of course, this is, if you say it's a technical project, but the technical project is still performed and completed by the people, and there are different people that you have to get accustomed, have conversation, build a relationship. And in some cases, it's instant click, and in some cases, it requires a lot of massaging and back and forth communication. Yes.
Yeah.
And it's just something that you would have to accept. Yeah, I think.
Aim for perfection, but be okay with good enough. Well, more than good enough, I'd say. But
yeah, absolutely. And one thing that I learned within this, like being flexible, I think my advice would be if you feel the need for the changes, do them during the implementation phase.
Yeah.
That's also very important. Because at the implementation phase, you can have this conversation with the implementation team, the technical team, the integration team, and then you can just adjust something. And it would prolong for 2 weeks, but at least it would be done. Because if you postpone it after the implementation, that would be separate contract. That would be, renegotiation. Again, it would be, that do we need it? But we already agreed on that. Okay, so it's going to be like more costly for the company in the long run. So if you feel the need, don't be like frigid. I think that's the idea of being flexible as well. Yes.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
So clearly a lot of lessons learned from something that is quite a big program, 7 entities involving many different stakeholders from many different disciplines. And I think there is at various levels of how our listeners would be managing their own programs or planning to launch new programs, a lot of things that they can take away from this. But I am curious to hear what your takeaway is, in the sense that obviously you've done this, you've learned a lot, I can imagine. But if you were to do a similar program again, what is the one thing that you would change? One thing you do differently?
I would allocate more time for the implementation.
Okay.
Yes. Whatever vendor, it can be done quite fast. It depends on the company, on the internal policies and processes, but selecting vendor can be pretty fast. If, for example, you've done your homework, you've done the market research, and you've talked to multiple vendors before that. But having agreed on the implementation deadlines and have it more extended, that would be my go-to advice, definitely, because something anyway would come up. Some requirements would definitely change.
Yes.
Stakeholders would change, people doing the project would change, participating. So just to allocate, because something you would definitely forget. You would say like, oh, I've compiled a great team. I have all the requirements in place. This is how I envision the workflow to go. But your company is also moving. Your company is also changing, and the processes and the platforms and the solution in the company is also changing. And while you think that, oh, I'm going to do that integration, I'm going to implement this platform, and I have this integration at this moment of the workflow, yes, the function, let's say procurement, running that platform, they're also changing. Yeah. They're also doing modification. They're also adjusting, doing some tweaks and twitches, and you need to be able to adjust to those changes as well. So that's why I would advise to probably put a little bit more timelines for the implementation, because even though once you have done testings, everything is right, when you do it actually in the production environment, something would definitely come up. That's for sure, 100%. Yeah, even though you have perfect copy of test environment to production environment, something would come up that you have not thought of before, and you would need to adjust it. Definitely.
Right. Well, I think there's a lot of food for thought for our listeners. So I really appreciate you coming onto the program, onto the show, and sharing your insights. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me. Yeah, absolutely pleasure to have this conversation with you.
I enjoyed it very much. Thank you.